these guys are crazy. I need to get outside. So I know this looks really bad in here. It is a little bit wet, but it's not bad. But thankfully this part over here is really dry. So I've been bedding them on this side and feeding them on that side. And for the most part, everybody lays where they're supposed to. I really should have had these feeders done before lambing, but you know, life happens and it didn't get done. So this is just a short-term solution. These girls will be going outside minus one pair that's in here. There's one lamb that's not doing as good as it should before it goes outside. So while I had you guys here, I was just going to talk about why I do winter lambing, like what are the pros and cons of it. And basically the one pro that I quite like is that you're hitting a market that not many other people are hitting. If you were only spring lambing, you know, you're going to be ready to market your lambs right when everybody else is, so the prices go down. So with doing these guys a little bit earlier, I always aim, you know, right when that market's high, which is during an ethnic holiday. I usually aim to have them, you know, 4 months before the expected date, and then the bigger ones go. You know, another pro of it is that I can split up my groups a little bit more. I do not have the barn space to lamb out 120 ewes at once, and I don't really want to do it out on pasture. You know, when a lamb is born, they only have a certain amount of time. They have a brown fat stores, and I believe it's their kidneys, but that's what they're living off of until they get that first drink of colostrum. And from that first drink of colostrum, they get their antibodies and they get, you know, their energy to get functional. So you only have a certain amount of time before that brown fat burns up. So if you have a lamb that comes out and gets cold within the first 5 or 10 minutes and isn't up and sucking on the mum, getting that nice rich gold colostrum, then, you know, I hate to say it, but shit out of luck as far as that. Lambs will die. So these Dorpers, what I have noticed over the years is that they just get up and go. There's no stopping them. They just get up and go. Like even like through this cold stretch over in that lambing barn, you know, some days it was down to -5, -7 in there, and they're out, they're up, they're sucking, and they're ready to go. The other huge bonus of them, can you hush up? The other huge bonus to them is that they are, you know, classified in that hair sheet category. With that, when their mom licks them, they instantly come clean and then they dry very quickly. The one thing, those wool cross ewes that I just shipped this year and got rid of, the older girls, they were... their lambs would come out and they're like really super gooey and they don't dry. Like the wool just doesn't dry. Now, yes, little wool lambs will get up and run like this and play the lamb zoomies, but Dorpers do seem to play a little bit more than your average wool lambs, I find. Again, I don't have a whole lot to compare it to, just more or less what I see online and a few of the breeders that I know, but everyone always comments about how active my Dorper lambs are in the winter. Like they're honestly, like they're not just huddled in a shed when they're outside. They're up and they're playing. So yeah, the other benefits of having winter lambing, so these guys being born between that December 11th and they should be done around January 4th, they're gonna be weaned and then their mums are going to be dried off before the grass happens. So to me, this is another huge bonus, another huge pro. Just the fact that these ewes can be dry when the green grass starts coming. That is one thing about lambs on pasture, I will say, is that they are very susceptible to parasites. You know, I did have a group a couple years ago where I did have Barber poleworm, and if anyone that is a livestock producer or has heard about that knows how fast it can affect these little lambs, and I just don't want to deal with it. So I do dry lot all my lambs after they're weaned. So yeah, there's lots of pros and cons. Definitely more labor intensive, definitely a little higher expense. I've done a few things over in the lambing barn, and I will take you guys over there and show you a few things that I have found to help mitigate humidity and just, yeah, the whole winter lambing can be an issue with ventilation and stuff. So I'll go show what I do in my barn. Now, it's not perfect, but maybe it'll give someone a few ideas of what they can do in their barn. As you can see, got a whole group pen set up over here too. I hate to say it, but this barn sucks. But I've made things work with a few different ways. So I'm sure you guys remember from the videos in the earlier in this cold snap where these walls were white with frost. So there is humidity in here because this pack is constantly producing moisture and ammonia, and you know, just themselves, the urine and everything else, they're constantly producing moisture. And when you have cold air outside and warm air inside, you get condensation. So this barn is not insulated, and this ceiling, it has a ceiling in, but there's no blown in insulation up top. So the only places that are insulated are that end door, and then this big door is insulated, and then obviously where my room is. One thing that I do struggle with is that when we have such a cold snap like we did, to keep this pack dry. So what I do to alleviate that is I'll actually spread a product called Stall Dry every day or every other day. And that just helps, one, to neutralize the ammonia so that the air quality stays better in here. And then two, it does help dry things out. Now, Stall Dry itself is basically granulated clay mixed with diatomaceous earth. So what I do, because Stall Dry is quite expensive and I'm cheap, is where I clean the feeders. Now, obviously I did not clean tonight, but around these feeders, when the lambing pens are all set up, I clean twice a day to keep it a little bit more manageable. And then also when the lambing pens are set up over there, you can't open up the doors when there's too much manure and straw on the front side of them. So it just becomes a struggle. I don't want to deal with it, and it's not that hard to clean. And why I choose to use that white powder diatomaceous earth is just because on the bare concrete, it's just to neutralize the ammonia. It doesn't need to, like, it dries on its own. So it's not too big of a deal to have to use the Stall Dry on it. I just need something to stop them from slipping, and then to help neutralize the ammonia that is in that urine that is underneath that as you open it up. The only ventilation that I do have in here is to manually open and close the doors as needed. So depending on how cold or how warm it is, like tonight's a little bit chilly, not terrible, but I just have that door cracked a little bit. I have it open obviously to feed and stuff, but it's just, I manually manage the fresh air coming in. So the other thing that I will do, and I think people call this a deep litter method, I put Stall Dry, then shavings, and then straw. And then partway through lambing, I will take and put another layer of shavings and then more fresh straw on top. And what I find that does is it just pulls all that moisture down into the bottom of the pack and helps it ferment to be able to put out heat, to be able to heat this barn, because the only thing heating it is the pack and the sheep. So I do have option of that up there as a heater. Right now it's only on a fan. Got a spider web I gotta clear out of here. Yeah, right now it's only on the option of a fan, because that's the other way I try and mitigate the moisture, is to keep the air moving. So normally I would have that white thing up in the corner is a dehumidifier, and it will help take a lot of moisture out of the air. Like that bucket I think is 3 gallons, and I was taking 3 gallons out twice a day. So 6 gallons a day of moisture were coming out of that corner, because you can see that plywood's quite a bit darker than everywhere else. that moisture collects in that corner really bad. But the other bonus to that is that it keeps the air flowing. So why it was placed over there is that this blows this way and keeps that air circulating, and then that would blow it this way, and it helps keep the air moving and keeps it quite a bit fresher in here. But then also the moisture can't settle as easy if it's constantly moving. But there is other things that can go wrong with having too much draft. Lambs can get cold with a draft. They just need somewhere dry and draft free. It's not so much the cold that kills them. It can, but draft free is the biggest thing I can say for lambs. What I wanted to do in this barn, and I was kind of deterred a little bit just from talking to other producers and just a little bit more research into it. But what I wanted to do was put a positive air pressure tube in this barn. So basically what happens is it draws air from the outside and then it puts it into tube style, and then that tube will feed fresh air into the barn, and it keeps it positive pressure all the time so that the moist and stinky air can escape through all the other vents. I opted not to do that just by producers saying that without an insulated barn, it was really tough to keep it warm enough. So I opted not to, and we'll see, maybe in the future. I mean, you got to keep an eye on cash flow and stuff as far as everything. And I did spend a lot of money this year, so it wasn't in the cards for this year, but I might still make an option of that in the future, of putting a positive air pressure tube in here and insulating. We'll see. I might change my mind 10 times over before it actually happens. But as of right now, that seems to be what's working. The ceiling was intended to be insulated at the beginning, and then it never happened. But I do have vapor barrier up there, and then in the attic there are gable vents to keep upstairs in the attic all cleared out of moisture and stuff. So, but with keeping that airflow up the top, it does condensate on that ceiling as well. So unfortunately this does drip when it melts, and it just makes it a little bit more wet, but you just deal with it. Opening up the door, keeping that fresh air flowing, and just trying to keep it a comfortable temperature and, you know, not a musty smelling barn. The other thing I should mention is that I do line my pens up along these two walls here because they're internal walls and they won't have draft. Now that north pen, the first pen over there, if the wind's blowing just right, there will be a small draft over there. It's very, very small. So I don't use that pen if there's like a crazy north wind, but these lambing jugs that set up along this side are all on interior walls, because on the other side of that wall over there is the nursery where the milk machine babies are. So the other tip that I will share, part of it is a personal choice, but the other part is like a huge recommendation. One thing for successful winter lambing, having somewhere warm for them to go if they do get cold. If you have to warm a lamb up quickly, you know, have the supplies right there for you. Now in this little room, I have this small water heater here, and I was going to do an on-demand, but I chose to just go with this small tank, just because the on-demands were more expensive for one that would have worked. And you know, it's just having that option of warm water here, and all of like your milk machine, and you know, all the stuff that if you have a lamb that goes down, you can warm it up very quickly and get that colostrum made and get it in their belly. Now, yes, I do sleep in that room. That is a personal choice. I only do it that way because my house is quite a ways across the yard. So by the time that I would make up to do a night check, you know, at 2:30 in the morning, I would be awake by the time I walked over here, did night check, dealt with anything I needed to deal with, and then went back into the house, and I couldn't fall back asleep. So that was a personal preference. Again, it's not the most ideal situation, but for a 3-week lambing period, I am actually quite comfortable sleeping in that room. And then also the other reason why I choose to sleep in the barn is I am absolutely paranoid after that barn fire there, well, coming 6 years ago, about having sheep or animals locked in a barn. We did lose a couple of goats in that barn fire, and I was only like less than a week away from lambing, and I couldn't even imagine, because I think at that time I want to say there was 80 due all at once. But now that I've yammered on and on and on about that, if you have any more questions, just let me know. I do find that this is a lot of manual management doing this winter lambing like this, and that's where the labor portion comes in. And with that, you have to make extra money off your lambs to make it worthwhile. And that is why I decided to go this direction. And again, the Dorpers are a big thing with that. So I do think that it is a huge benefit of these Dorpers themselves as to why it is successful to lamb in the wintertime for me. My 2 cents, maybe I'm completely off on that, but these guys have such a crazy adaptability that it suits them to do this. And then, like I said, they're dry when they go out onto pasture. They don't have lambs with them, so I don't have to worry about lamb parasites. But I can also keep the weight off these girls by limiting the amount of pasture that I give them so that they don't get morbidly obese, minus Big Bertha over there in the corner. Hopefully found a little bit of information that you can use for your own system. This is what I do. Is it perfect? No. But anyway,